Our next panel is Artisanship in the 21st Century, and we have a good mix of people, a CEO of a luxury watch manufacturer, François-Henry Bennahmias from Audemars Piguet, a museum director, Lisa Phillips of the New Museum, and Amanda Parks, an engineer from Manufacture New York. So they are all, come on out. Thank you. I'll sit here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, Lisa, what's the dress? We start with your dress.
This is a new creation by an artist, Chris O'Feely, that we have on at the museum right now, and Print All Over Me, a new fashion company.
All right, we will get back to how that was made. François-Henry, let's start with you. Can you just tell us, so you are the CEO of Audemars Piguet, which is based in the same small Swiss valley that it's been for how long?
140 years.
140 years. Okay, so how much has the manufacturing of your product changed in 140 years?
Actually, not much. No, because we still work almost the way people were working around 40 years ago.
Can we show while he's talking the video of how the watches are made?
We use, obviously, the new technologies, computers and everything, but the only thing that it did help us with is time. In a sense of before, it might have taken you 7, 10, 12 years to make a single watch. When today, we've narrowed down this to potentially 18 months to 24 months. A mechanism, though, could take up to 5 to 7 years. Now it's 3 to 5.
And that's because of technology.
Absolutely, but beside that, all the craft, the way we've been working for so long is still the same today.
So the technology has just kind of increased efficiencies.
Absolutely.
But the labor.
The labor is still the same, and funny enough, because you could say then, but how do you manage to convince a new generation to be interested in such
right.
craftsmanship? And we've got 3 generations of people in our factory. We got a 15-years-old generation, the 30-years-old generation.
Is that legal, 15 years old?
We start to take kids at 15 years old,
wow,
yes,
that's
for
amazing.
training. Yes, and we go up to 40, 50 years old. So it's we got the 3 generations, and we get a lot of inquiries from the younger generation now that wants to be involved in watchmaking because they see a bright future.
Well, it seemed to me that there was an older generation that was dying out, and maybe now these younger kids who are interested, but like a big empty middle.
We missed an entire generation in the 70s, so we lost. Like
no one cared, and
no, nobody had a job anymore.
Right.
So we had to rebuild this one step at a time. And actually, when we think that at Audemars Piguet we make roughly 35 to 36,000 watches a year, just to put things in perspective,
right.
A brand like Rolex makes $1 million.
Who makes $1 million?
Rolex.
Uh-huh.
So it's
okay,
a completely
so
different ballpark. It takes a lot of time to make sure that we've got the right skills and the right people. So we have to take them as young as possible to make sure they will be going when they reach 18, 19, or 20 years old.
So just tell me, what does the smartwatch world mean for the complicated watch world?
A lot of different things. But I would say we've heard through this complete day of luxury, I said one word has been missing since the early morning. It's emotions. Mm-hmm. Emotions. I mean, it's unbelievable. We spoke about luxury, technical, smart, not stupid, only smart, but emotions. And I wanted to ask, may I ask a question to the crowd?
Absolutely.
Okay, I need honest answers. Who has cried over the last 6 months, emotionally, not painfully, about a movie, a child doing something, a beautiful object, a voice or something? Raise your hand, please.
Who has
Raise
cried?
Your hand. Cried.
Oh my God, look at these.
Great, we are still human.
A bunch of crybabies in here.
We are still human. Because at the end, luxury is true emotions. Luxury is not something you need. It's not your reptilian brain that says, oh, it's cold, or it's warm, and I have to move my hands. It's a true emotions. And we have to gather and to make sure that all our people who work for the Audemars Piguet and our clients still get these emotions when we talk to them.
So how does one market emotions and market high-end watches? Your watches cost between $12,000 and $700,000.
Yes.
Ish.
Without diamonds, yes.
How do you market that through technology? I mean, technology is accessible. I mean, and these are incredibly kind of prestige luxury
One
items?
client at a time. We go one by one. If I manage to convince you to wear a watch and to buy one of our watches tomorrow, then you become our ambassador because you got to talk to some of your friends. It's going to be one at a time. And when we open the door to internet sales, for example, we look at internet, but internet sales, we don't do it. But we do it. But today it's called another word. It's phone. Our store in New York does 20 million in revenue. We sell roughly 300 watches a year for 20 million in revenue. Half of the sales are done by phone. Meaning
Wait,
people...
but don't you think that's a number that's going to continually decrease?
No.
Really?
No.
The phone?
Yes, because people start to... First of all, you don't go into the Audemars Piguet world by just luck.
Right, you're not doing a lot of street traffic.
Not really. So even though Will.i.am is a good friend, but we're not there yet. It's a matter of getting to know the people, and they get to know the brand, and slowly but surely they get into it. And when they talk to us, the first connection is going to be the phone. And sometimes they feel comfortable enough to say, this is exactly what I want. Please send it to my house. I will wire the money, and this is it. Except that as soon as we have a connection, which is a phone today, and it could be internet tomorrow, then we're going to start to interact directly with the person.
So you have a website, but it's just for information. You don't do e-commerce on it. Is that something that you think you'll do in the future? Maybe not.
We will use internet as another potential tool to communicate with the clients, but we need the direct connections. Because at this level of prices and this level of experience, if I cannot explain, justify, show you, and deliver special emotion, I'm out.
Okay, good. I mean, not good. I don't want you to be out. But let's go to Lisa for a second. So Lisa, at the new museum, I mean, I feel like part of your mission is to think outside the traditional boundaries of art institutions. So how do you do that? And why is that important to do? Why does it matter?
Yeah, we're not a traditional museum in that we don't have a collection. We really see ourselves as cultural producers. And we have a very vital role in bringing new works into life. So we support artists and culture as it's happening. And this has been our mission from the beginning. We were founded in 1977, and our mission is new art, new ideas. So
it's all working artists?
It's all working artists, and we really help them make history. That's what we're doing. Instead of reflecting on the past, we're looking forward to the future.
And so in what ways are you doing that?
So we do it in a number of ways. We give artists their first shows in museums, and they always remember that. And Chris O'Feely, who's having a show right now, has never had an exhibition in an American museum before, even though he created a sensation with a piece at the Brooklyn Museum 15 years ago. His work is not known, and it's been very, very surprising for people to see. But we do it in other ways, too. So we have a leading exhibition program, but we have what we call different software programs that extend the museum out laterally into the world. One of them is Ideas City, which looks at the future of cities with culture as a driving force behind the vitality of cities. That's one thing. And most recently, we started an incubator next door to the museum in an adjoining property for art, technology, and design. So we're nurturing young talents there through supporting their work and giving them professional development and mentorship.
But so this is quite a bit about what we've been talking about. So in this, you've chosen 70 or 100 people to be part of this incubator, and some are artists, some are designers, some are engineers. And what's the idea? Is that being in proximity to one another?
Yeah, it's a curated community that we put together, and it's a special skill that we have as a museum. We have this vast network of creative people that we know in a lot of different disciplines, and we're able to bring the best of them together to work together. This is tremendously valuable to them, and it's something that I think people haven't recognized that museums have the ability to do, and we've started this, and it's been hugely successful since it opened 3 months ago. So this company, for instance, Print All Over Me, which is a fashion group, a brother and sister team, has become so successful in the last few months that they are debuting at Art Basel Miami now, 3 months later.
And what is it? So what do they? You can give them any print and they can put it on something, or you design
Yes, it's sort of a vehicle for user-generated design, and they work with established designers to make templates like the form of this dress, but then any user can send in a JPEG, an image that they want on the dress, and they have it produced very inexpensively and well in China, so for these bespoke products.
So I feel like you've been at the forefront of kind of, I don't know what the word is, but technologically produced art and internet art, 3D printed art. Where does that leave? And everyone, if you haven't, you should go on the website of the new museum. What's the name of the program where you commission?
Yeah, it's called First Look.
First Look, where they commission original works created just for the website, and it's amazing.
I mean, we realize we have a long history, as you say, of working in that space between art and technology, artists who are using the internet and sometimes using it as their primary material. And so, yes, we have this commission program online, but we really see our website as a destination, a space in itself, not an advertisement for the museum, not a magazine for the museum and what we're doing, but a place where things are happening, where you can go and experience work in that space. So we commission artists every month to make work specifically for that online space. And
so that work, I mean, this might sound like a really kind of anti-art question, but considering that you're really encouraging new tools and new ways of making art, what does that do in terms of sort of traditional craftsmanship, traditional artistic techniques, skill, abilities? I mean, does that stuff start to go away? Does that become less important? You know, the actual painting and skills like, you know, like that.
Yeah, well, we really reflect how artists are working. And there's been a big change over the last 30 years, I would say, away from strict categories and towards crossover hybrid activities. That's really defines our postmodern era. So
it's a little bit like what Michael Govan was talking about, this sort of flattening of hierarchies. I don't know if you were...
Yeah, I mean, when I first started at the Whitney as a curator in the early 80s, when I wanted to bring a Cindy Sherman photograph into the collection, the director said, "You must prove to me that it's a painting, and then we can acquire it." Can you believe
photography
how far we've come since then? Because
it didn't
photography
count as
was in another category, and it was considered an inferior medium. Well, that's all gone now.
So Amanda, so you are working with this company, Manufacture New York, that is trying to bring fashion manufacturing back to New York through researching new materials, new textiles, new supply chain.
A combination of all different kinds of infrastructure change and vertical integration. So what we are is a hybrid fashion incubator and full manufacturing facility. We have 160,000 square feet in Brooklyn, as well as we have a R&D lab for research on advanced textiles, so everything from biology and chemistry laboratory, wearable electronics, and digital fabrication technologies related to soft materials.
So how if you're doing all this sort of high-tech research into fabrics and fabrication, where does that leave the lonely craftsman?
Well, actually, it's really about the integration of the two, and I think it's about thinking along the lines of how technology can help craftsmanship, and that's
sort of what François-Henry was talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you think about it, like I come from the world of human-computer interaction, and one of the sort of principles is, okay, use computers for what they're good at, which is sort of logic and repeatability and calculation, and use humans for what they're good at, which is intuition and creativity. And so having systems that can actually free up that creativity in terms of time and efficiency for the designers inside of that space. So, and also kind of carve out and share that creativity. One potential example is we have a new collaboration with Autodesk and rising young star designer Daniel Silverstein, who does all zero waste patterning. And he has this incredible intuition about how to get all the shapes of the pattern to fit into this perfect area that then ends up as zero waste. And we're trying to turn this into a software plugin so that other people can actually try to have this, capture his intuition and be able to kind of have a new sustainable model for pattern making.
But obviously there will be some. I mean, and I'm not here on stage on behalf of the laborer, but there will be some job changing, and there'll be few. If you are doing this and you are doing this more efficiently, there are fewer seamstresses. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's interesting because part of our model at Manufacture New York is we actually are we have a partnership with the New York City EDC, and we're considered a sort of economic development engine with job creation and industrial modernization and kind of bringing lots of good things back to the city. And so there is this sort of, on the surface, this odds of, okay, if you're going to have more technological efficiency, you're going to get rid of jobs. But what it really does is maybe you get rid of one kind of job, which is sort of the worst kinds of jobs in manufacturing, but you're creating and training people in different ways. So maybe you're turning them into CAD operators, which they can transcend different industries as opposed to just having them cut patterns, or these sorts of things. And then it also, when you have efficiencies inside of the manufacturing space, you then can actually have, it's cheaper for the designers to produce, and then they can hire more people in-house. So it's about where those jobs get created, and you kind of have to work around that Luddite fallacy.
Right.
So.
That was, just to go back to Lisa for a second, will you show us, I think you have slides, will you show us a little bit about
Yeah, absolutely.
what you're doing at the new
We
museum?
both have slides.
Okay.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, and we have some overlap, I think,
Yeah,
in
we do.
what
Well,
we're
it's
doing.
interesting because you both have incubators where you are bringing together people from seemingly disparate fields to create together.
So that's the building next to the museum. The museum's got the boat hanging off the front of it. And this is the space. It was formerly Artist Studios. Robert Indiana, Tom Wesselman, Jim Rosenquist lived and worked in this building, so it has a nice history. I'm sure you know this stat too. So there's a really big need for spaces that support people that want to do their own projects and go freelance after school. And there's a huge need for people that are graduating in the design field. And there's so many of them coming out of schools in New York without the next step to take. So New Ink, our incubator, works at the intersection of these different kinds of spaces. It's somewhere between an artist residency, co-working space, a tech incubator, and a university lab. And in fact, we have Columbia University's GSAP Studio X within our incubator. So we have a university lab within the lab.
So you're a nonprofit.
We're nonprofit.
But there's going to be ideas and but what I'd like to know, so you're going to make money on this? I mean, it does seem like there will be ideas generated that you have facilitated. Do you have some?
Yeah, I mean, that is a secret hope of mine. It wasn't what led to this, but museums are really dealing with the challenge of how to become economically sustainable. Philanthropy is changing. 50% of our operating budget is made through earned income initiatives already. So we're looking at the different businesses that we operate, merchandising, events, publishing, and others. And this is the
revenue
newest.
streams. Newspapers know about that.
Yes. So anyway, I don't want to show too many things, but curated community we talked about. And just to show you people working in the space and really enjoying each other. There are many different kinds of practices within the space, and we really thought about how people might complement each other's skills there. And within the first month, we said, let's see how many are actually working together already. It was half of the community working together.
That just happened.
Right. Just happened naturally without our doing anything. We have virtual reality, 3D printing. This is a group of advisors who are mentoring, and we have top people. John Maeda, who just spoke on the last panel, is one of them. And people from Kickstarter, Foursquare, investors.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
Amazing.
That's enough.
That's enough slides. Is this interesting to you and to your world? I mean, I feel like part of what you're doing is really preserving. I mean, do you feel like you have anything in common with these women? I mean, aren't you all?
As a dress code, you mean?
Yeah. No, you dress differently. But I mean, you're all in the business of trying to create beautiful, meaningful things for people, to get back to what you were talking about before. So do you feel like you're sort of a Luddite in what they're doing is somehow threatening to...
No.
Okay.
Actually,
And I mean,
no, the most important thing is, and it has been addressed this morning a little bit, at the end, we are, as I say, I go back to the numbers of watches we make every year. And
Right.
our goal is never to go to the 150 or 200,000 because we could actually not even make them. It would
Right.
be impossible. So at the end, all these smartwatches are coming. Some people look at it as a threat, some other opportunities. I look at them and we look at them as just another player on the field. But for what we do, especially what we do, when we target 40,000 people per year in the world, it's fine. We can look at it and say, you know what? We have enough to say and to deliver as an experience with our clients to sustain and to go on for the next 140 years.
and isn't the more everything becomes smart, the more people sort of long for...
Always. I've got an 18-year-old
Products.
daughter. She's in UCLA. And she's the most, and she comes from the generation of the most ADD
Right.
people ever. I mean, she can do homework, having the TV on, talking to her friend on the phone, texting on Facebook. She does everything. My parents would kill me if I would do that when I was 18 years old. At the end, when she orders food in, she's got to say, okay, tonight I'm going to get Chinese, Indian, Italian, French, whatever she wants. But once in a while, she's going to really enjoy me taking her to a very fancy place where she's going to enjoy a real meal, well-made, well-prepared, with a different taste, because at the end, there is a difference. There's a real difference. And there will always be an appreciation for things that last and are done by hand, where you feel it. There is something which is completely different to something which is replicable by millions. This is what we have to keep in mind. This is the most important thing. And actually, funny enough, something we put in place recently in our company, we don't let people retire anymore.
You don't, sorry?
We don't let people retire anymore.
So you bring them on at 15 and then you never
No,
let
so
them
they
out?
reach 65, and then we give them the opportunity to say, you know what? Because you know so much, and we need your know-how.
That's interesting.
You need to stay. You come 2 days a week if you want. Come 3 days a week if you want. But you need to deliver the message to the younger generation that needs you to perpetuate the business
That's
on and on for the years
That's
to come.
really, really fascinating.
And in many ways, how your company works is actually what we're trying to replicate, right? We're trying to bring this back. So, I mean, we talk about kind of the reshoring and, creating domestic, exactly, later. Creating, bringing back domestic manufacturing, and that is part of it, having a place where we can actually make high quality goods that you have control over the sourcing, you have control over the craftsmanship, and also, not actually losing those kinds of crafts like high level pattern making, et cetera, and have places where you can train
Well, but it is
people.
probably true, François-Henry, that your designers and artisans, they're all together.
Always.
So you are kind of a hybrid incubator already. Naturally, the designing and the manufacturing are going on together, and as it has for 100 years. And that's what you're sort of trying to bring those two things back in America, because they've been completely...
Right, and this concept of next shoring, so instead of just the reshoring, it's saying, okay, if you put technology and R&D next to, in proximity of the manufacturing and of the traditional processes, there's going to be this kind of osmosis and flow about how things get developed. Designers understanding design for manufacturing from the ground up, being exposed to new technologies. I came from the MIT Media Lab, and so I witnessed kind of firsthand how you put sort of seemingly disparate people at these different labs in the same space, and you get this kind of extraordinarily interesting things that come out of it. And that's kind of what we're trying to produce in this space, is just put everybody next to each other.
Right, which I feel like is a little bit what will.i.am, my new hero, was saying, just that you've got to just bring all these people together and work together.
I got some components for him too.
You got some components. Does anyone have questions? I can't see the clock at all, so I have no idea I think there's people that can come around. You must have questions for these interesting people. Oh, you didn't show your slides.
Yeah, I know. I was just going to,
well,
if that's okay, I'll jump in here. First slide. All right, got it. Okay, there we go. Oh, so this was just some of my past work, and I think the point was, next slide, the point was really just to say that when we're talking about new technologies,
you have to do it and press hard, they said, with commitment.
There we go. So when we're talking about new technologies, it's about the kind of how do we actually integrate new technologies and new technological processes without actually changing the kinds of objects that we're making. And so this is some of my own work and my students' work, but the idea being that a lot of these actually involve technology that you wouldn't know. And so they could look like traditional kind of handmade artisanal objects. Like, for instance, the bathing suit in the bottom was we did a whole kind of algorithmic design 3D printed that, et cetera, but then did a traditional silicone casting and embroidery with, with gemstones. And suddenly you have an object that is this hybrid fusion, and people look at it and go, how did you make that? Because it's computational on one side, but all the materials and the kind of craft is still very much there. And then I just have a few slides of Manufacture New York. We're under construction right now. Yeah, 160,000 square feet in Brooklyn. This is the building right on the water on Sunset Park, massive building. And this is this merging of like these two languages. These are actually the same technology, zigzag stitch, and then the sort of MC10, the stretchable circuit, uses this curve to get the same performance. So we're trying to merge these worlds. The biology lab and the electronics and digital fabrication to make things like this, digital fabrication. And then, like I said, the proximity of innovation inside the space. Another thing, soft circuits and wearable electronics is part of it. And then, what I think is, the most fascinating part, the cutting edge place, which we're hearing about from the next big thing segments, a lot of people that are kind of, friends and collaborators of mine, the biology and chemistry kind of research into that space. So because to me, science is kind of the ultimate luxury. In a sense, it's hard to do. It costs a lot of money. It makes things that are very rare. And that's where we want to start, for new sustainable models kind of going forward. So,
does somebody know what we are on time?
There's a clock right there.
I can't see it. What does it say?
14 minutes.
14 minutes?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. Really?
Now it's 13:50.
Okay, all right. Well then, will you tell me about the supply chain? I feel like part of what you're trying to do with technology is to create some transparency with the supply chain and just how incredibly complicated that is.
So one of the things that having everything...
Wait, let me interrupt you
while
I'm... interrupt you with myself. Do you have a supply chain? I'm just wondering but is everything compressed, or you're bringing things from all over the world?
No, we have hundreds of suppliers for little tiny things.
Tiny things, of course, that was.
But the notion of provenance and where the things are coming from do apply to us as well. I mean, diamonds, obviously.
Right.
Gold, recently, more and more people want to know how gold is made and where and from by who. And on a smaller scale, alligators that we use for our straps.
Okay.
Yes,
okay, so good. So then this is incredibly relevant to what you
do. And so one of the things that having everything in one building, it allows us to have vertical integration across all these processes and across different manufacturers. We have 30 different manufacturers inside the one building. And so what we're doing is a pretty new experiment in terms of infrastructure, which is, our entire building will have a transparent supply chain, meaning we're going to know everything that goes in and everything that goes out in the day. We're going to know energy processes across all different kinds of situations. And even starting from our construction, we're working with Ole Sanderson, who's an amazing, cutting-edge architect in sustainable design, and so we're going to know his process, from the beginning, and then using systems like SourceMap, which you can actually map, where things are coming from.
Can you explain SourceMap?
Yeah, so it's really it's a software tool, but it's kind of like it's a web platform that allows you to basically find out where your raw materials are coming from and create a map of of how your product is made, everything that goes into it, and where it traveled, et cetera.
Any company can do this, any design firm.
Exactly, and they do customized platforms for bigger companies if you want something very specific. And the founder, Leo Bonanni, who I teach with at MIT, we were colleagues there together, and it came from this idea that, okay, we want to try to open this up, and kind of more of an activist project, like companies. Companies are not telling us. And what it turned out to be, as he dug into the research, is actually the companies don't necessarily know themselves.
Right.
So it's become this platform for companies to actually map their own supply chains internally. And then,
So the assumption was that companies were being cagey, but in fact it was just so complex they
really because everybody subcontracts to other people. And so
tiny little factories and manufacturers.
And you go international, and suddenly it's really, really hard to figure out what's going on. So that is a big part of this as well, that the whole, knowledge is power, kind of in terms of the transparency. And also it allows our designers to know that what they're doing, you can make a decision to make something non-sustainable, but you actually get to know. So that's the difference.
Right. Okay, now we're opening it up to questions, and there they go. Okay. Is there somebody with a mic? Up here up front. There's someone in a blue dress up front.
Amanda, you said that science is the ultimate luxury. Can you talk about that, and maybe if the other two speakers could talk about what luxury is for them?
Yeah,
That's a good question. I should.
So, obviously this is coming from my perspective as being an engineer and in the sciences, but if you saw, for instance, Suzanne Lee's talk this morning, this whole idea that we can actually now use these kinds of biotechnologies in ways to make new materials that are exactly to our specifications. We can have actually life forms making stuff for us. I mean, silkworms already make silk. Let's have them make it in the way that we want it to make it. And so, in a sense, to me, that this is a hard thing to do. It's rare. It makes incredibly unique things, and things that have never existed before in that potential. And to me, that feels like in the process of that, there's a massive amount of value. It also means that we can create things to our specifications in terms of having them last or not last, right? And so I think luxury, we've talked a little bit about, do you want to hold on to something, and that versus sort of fast fashion. And I think that what this kind of research space is, you could make something that you want to have around forever, or where's the Snapchat for fashion? Like that should be the answer to fast fashion, is say, let's have something that literally disintegrates after 3 months, after the trend is over. You throw it in your compost bin or you dissolve it in water. And so to me, that's kind of how I think about that space of luxury.
Interesting. You want to talk a little bit about luxury?
Sure. I'm going to always go back to this notion of emotion and luxury. Funny enough, there was a study recently made about the ultra net worth individuals, and what is their number one goal when they spend money, when they want to go, it's travel. And the funny thing, travel. And when you talk to these people, actually, and we get to know a lot of them, obviously, the first thing they tell you is, we want to go to a place where we don't have to use cellular phones, computers, anything. We want just to be able to relax. And as stupid as it might sound, luxury is time, but it's also the time just to enjoy things. We are a sponsor this week of Art Basel. Tonight we have a big event. And we have an artist named Theo Jensen who makes incredible beasts in tubes. He's from Holland, and they walk with the wind. Luxury for me was I've never met the guy before. It's the first time I'm going to meet the guy, and I met him yesterday. 70 years old, and he talks about this beast, and these 10 minutes with him, I felt like was backstage, behind the scenes. Okay, to get to know how he came up with this idea of making animals with tube that would just walk with the wind and act like real animals. When the guy is 70 years old, he's a physician, doesn't graduate at anything, was a writer for newspapers, cannot do anything, including put a frame, a picture wall on his wall, and his wife is pissed about him because he cannot do that. He found the most intrigued beast that's going to walk on the beach tonight and say, and you're not good at with your hands? He said, I'm the worst possible person. That's luxury as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For me, luxury is the ability to slow down and have a space for contemplation, reflection, creativity, and that's really what we want to provide at the museum. But I think that's such an important space, and it's a tremendous luxury today when everything is moving so fast, and your inbox is full of 1,000 emails in an hour.
I mean, it is interesting talking about the idea of fast fashion, of a product that actually disintegrates. Livia Firth, who's here, was I watched her in a debate with somebody from H&M saying it doesn't matter how much organic cotton you're using, if it's still, then it's an organic cotton landfill. So that's a sort of fascinating way of.
Yeah, and then you add in, start to think about wearable electronics, and you're going to end up with both the textile waste and the techno trash, and it's sort of like I get my head starts spinning and getting worried about that. And that's also one of the reasons why I'm interested in things like fiber science. And there's ways to, like with Dan and the batteries, there's ways to have things that can be recyclable, that can be the components of circuits. And so really starting to think from literally the molecular structure up of how do we create these new.
Right. But isn't the ultimate sustainability sort of what you're doing, where it's you have a watch, you're never really throwing it away. You're passing it on, as opposed to, I can tell you how many fit bands and stuff I've already.
No, we've got a special department in our factory where we've got actually 5 people who are specialized in restoration. You can bring a watch from 1875. I'm serious. You can bring a watch from 1875, and they're going to remake the parts which are damaged, and remake the watch potentially from A to Z, from scratch, and do it exactly the way it was made then.
That sounds like luxury to me.
Yeah.
That's true luxury. Yes, it is.
There's another group in our incubator that's making anti-surveillance wear, and that's a big field that's developing. That's another luxury, I would say, is privacy. So.
No, but it's interesting because we're using all this technology. We're offering up our private lives. We're all choosing to do it, and then we're all like, how fast can I get away from my email, my Twitter feed?
To your point, I also think, though, there are ways to think about how technology can actually enable sustainability when we start to think about clothing as platforms, right? So if the thing that's beautiful about your model is that it's forever upgradable, right? And so we have that kind of model inside of luxury fashion, and so as we start to integrate technology, it's like, okay, the technology that's going into these things is going to have to be modular and replaceable, and maybe you have a dress that has a digital design inside of it, and instead of buying a new dress next season, you download a new pattern for it, and that's your new object. So you still keep the same dress for 10 years, So these are the kinds of interesting ways which technology can contribute to this kind of idea of having things that last and not just, become thrown away.
Anyone else?
Plastic bracelets.
Angela Mariani?
I disagree very strongly with his comment about the Birkin bag, because I can pretty much say that if my Birkin bag began to have a function, I would pretty much slap it across its face and send it home. I would.
Yeah.
And isn't the question more that you need, as a luxury brand, to continue to be able to talk to the next generation? And that there might, and I'm really asking all of you this, is the answer functionality? Or is the answer, as a luxury brand, being able to continue the dialogue and to translate those values? And is the value necessarily function?
Well,
do you desire function from everything?
Right, start with art.
Artwork is the ultimate luxury item. And it has nothing to do with utilitarian function in most cases. So,
it goes back to François-Henry's point. Yeah.
it serves a lot of other purposes, and I don't think functionality is high on that list.
Function is not the main value of a luxury item at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I would sort of answer your question around sort of embracing diversity, and that's what the fashion world has that the technology world doesn't, in the sense that every brand has its very unique identity, and we, as kind of items of self-expression, which is what fashion is, we have so many choices that we can make in the space. But in technology, the goal is more about winning. So Apple makes one device, and a 7-year-old man and a 14-year-old girl have the same device, and they can both relate to it. And once anything crosses over into this realm of the body, that's not the case. And so I think that in that, there's like that difficult transitional place that we have to figure out what fashion can kind of bring into that space. So I think keeping your uniqueness is really the biggest thing.
Do you want to add to that? Anyone else? There's someone back there who's got the mic. Megan, do you? There's someone over here.
One here. I have one here.
Hi there, this question is for Toby. And speaking of art as luxury,
Is that
your
you?
dress, is it Toby?
Wait,
Lisa.
Lisa, oh my
No,
God,
it's
I'm
not.
so-
But it's you have the most complicated job title.
Sorry.
With the word Toby.
We all do. Yeah.
Your dress, first of all, I'd love to be able to see it. And are your
Stand
artists...
up, Lisa.
A girl. It's beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful?
Well, and will your artist artwork be available to do that print dress option?
So Chris O'Feely is an artist who works in a very traditional way and has a high degree of craft in everything that he does. And his work is very desired and brings a lot on the marketplace. But he's also very interested in making things that will be available to a lot of people. So he worked with several groups in our incubator to create products that would be widely available. It's the first time an artist has done that, but I think we'll be pushing it more. He was very open to it. Not all artists are, but he really wanted his work to be available through different kinds of popular forms. So yes, this is available in our store. It's for sale. It's $350. It's a steal. It's in a limited edition of
Where's it made?
a few hundred.
$360.
It's made in China.
Yeah. So let's make it at Manufacture New York.
So yeah, please go to our website and you can see all of his products there. Does that
Anybody
answer your
else want to do any plugs?
Yeah.
They made this bag too.
Okay, one more question.
I know.
In the back.
Okay, this is for François-Henry. I love your comment about emotions and selling emotionally. My question is, in selling such a high-end watch, mechanical watch, where you have to educate your buyer, what's a successful method? Maybe provide an example of some non-traditional way that you were able to reach this highly select audience of an ultra-high net worth individual outside of a traditional ad campaign, or how do you get in front of this person? How do you find this person to sell 300 watches a year? Like, how do you do it?
300 watches was in one store.
One store.
It's still not a lot of watches.
No, it's not a lot of
How
watches.
many watches do you sell a year?
Yeah, 35, 36,000. But the answer is pretty simple, actually. It's media doesn't do much for us. We have to do it because somehow we have to play the game and we think that we might still get something out of it, but I'm almost sure it's not.
When you say media, you mean traditional media,
Traditional media.
not social media.
We do social media as well, and we touch another kind of people and clientele. But the ultimate communication tool for us, it's to invite you to our factory in Switzerland, to our place, and see the way things are made. Because I could talk about it for hours, and you go there, and you meet the people, you listen to them, and for 10, 15 minutes, you get it. You don't ask about prices anymore. You don't talk about prices anymore, because you get it. Okay? I'm going to steal a sentence used by Axel Dumas, the CEO of Hermès, recently, when he says Hermès is expensive to make. Audemars Piguet is expensive to make as well. And at the end, you see what the people are and the way they work, and that's your best experience possible. And that beats any advertising, any kind of social media possible.
But you're still using social media to reach these
We
people
have to-
and traditional media.
And for the younger generation, because we managed finally to sell and to start to sell watches for 18, 20 years old.
Really?
Yeah, we push their parents and say, graduation, Audemars Piguet. Really? Yes. Okay, so it's quite interesting. And the way we got to talk to these kids, there is no way it's the same thing that we will talk to a 50-year-old person.
Right.
But at the end, the message, the DNA of the message has to be the same. That's what we stand for, because at the end, that's the only thing that's going to make us live for another 140 years.
Amazing. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.